We're here today at the Action for Equity in Education in Oregon. And this is a historic moment for the communities of color and the immigrant communities. And we have here leaders from the African American community, leaders from the Native American tribes, leaders from the Pacific Islander communities and Asian communities, leaders from the Latino community. And we are all here saying enough is enough. Our public education system have failed our kids for the last 3 decades. We find ourselves with a graduation percentage of 50% for kids of color and English language learners, which is unacceptable. If you be in business, who will accept a 50% failure rate? You know, we only accept it in public education system. So we are all rallying around the governor and Superintendent Susan Castillo in their efforts to reform the public education system in Oregon. And this is a moment that it has taken us several years for all our communities of color to come together and really stand up for our kids and hold all the public education leaders accountable for the failures with our children. We want our children to go to college. We don't want our children to go to prison. And that's why we are all here, standing up side by side in support of equal education for our children of color and English language learners. Thank you all for being here. As you know, this is an effort that we have put together with the help of Stand for Children of Oregon, the Chalkboard Project, Self-Enhancement In, Black Parents Initiative, the Parent Organizing Project of the Salem Coalition for Equality, the Portland Parents Union, and several other organizations, and all the tribes throughout Oregon. And of course, APANO, the Asian and Pacific Islanders Coalition. We are all here today because we care. We care for what is happening to our children and our youth. And we want a different public education system than what we've been getting in the last 30 years. I'm gonna give you Dana.
Welcome everyone, thank you Eduardo. I want you to look at the graduation caps on the ground right there. There are 289 graduation caps. Each cap represents 20 students that failed to graduate this year. Unfortunately, students of color and students learning English are more likely to drop out of school, which impacts their ability to have success later in life. Those of us who are here today are compelled to right this wrong. We're here to raise awareness of the inequities that exist in education, especially for students of color and English language learners. But our work won't end today, and it doesn't end with raising awareness. We're here to have our voices and the voices of underserved students be included in the decisions made by elected leaders. So thank you for joining. Give yourself a round of applause for being here. First, we're going to hear from Woodburn Superintendent David Batista. Welcome him.
Buenas tardes. ¿No le gusta el español? Good evening. We know what works. We have known for many times what works. Sabemos lo que trabaja. Por mucho tiempo hemos sabido lo que trabaja. However, now we have an opportunity, a new beginning. Sin embargo, ahora tenemos una oportunidad de algo nuevo. We have a governor supporting our cause. Tenemos un gobernador que está apoyando nuestra causa. We have the energy to stand up and say, we cannot fail our kids. Tenemos la suficiente energía para pararnos y venir y decir, no podemos darle el fracaso a nuestros niños. Because if we fail our kids, we're failing our future. Porque si le fallamos a nuestros niños, le vamos a fallar al futuro. We know what works. Look around the state. Look around the state. Sabemos lo que trabaja. Vean alrededor del estado. The Oregon Department of Education has closing the achievement gap. Schools that have demonstrated that work for all of our children. El Departamento de Educación de Oregon tiene cómo cerrar esa brecha y tiene ejemplos de escuelas en todo el estado donde podemos ver que sí funciona. Tenemos Stand for Children. Tenemos organizaciones que nos están demostrando que sí se puede. Tenemos Chalkboard, organizaciones también que están viendo qué escuelas funcionan. EcoNorwest, institutions that are telling us there are schools that are beating the odds. In a very humble way, I ask you to look to others what is working, and let's support each other, not to look for blame. As administrators, my role is to look inside my system. Mi responsabilidad como administrador es ver dentro de mi sistema and see what I'm going to change y ver qué es lo que voy a cambiar. It has taken 13 years of path for Woodburn to be where it is. Le ha tomado a Woodburn 13 años para trabajar en donde está. And I can tell you right now that the senior class of 2012, we have committed a 100% graduation. Right now, February 2nd, we have 90% ready seniors to get their diploma. We have ways to go. Measure what we're doing. Midan lo que estamos haciendo. It is up to us to work in collaboration. It is up to us to do the impossible for our children. Vean lo que estamos haciendo y hacer lo imposible para no dejar a nuestros niños ahí. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Jameson. I'm with the Chalkboard Project. Buenas tardes. You and I have an obligation as Oregonians, as community members, and as parents, and most importantly, as educators, to do everything we can to ensure that each of Oregon's students has the opportunity to succeed. This is not an easy task, but it must become our most important shared priority. Right now, there are too many children who are shown that their success is limited by their zip code, by where they live, or by the income of their parents. You and I know that our children of color are not getting the chance for success that they deserve. And even more concerning is the recognition that other states, like Arizona or Maryland, are successfully addressing the achievement gap, while you and I have profound evidence that our children in Oregon are being left behind. Poverty matters, but it does not have to predetermine a child's future. Once a child arrives at school, you and I do have the ability to increase that student's chances for success. Of all the factors within the classroom, you and I know that the teacher has the most significant impact on student learning. You and I have powerful research that measures the impact of highly effective educators. Some research shows that having an effective teacher for 3 years in a row, that guarantee for your son or your daughter will eliminate the achievement gap. And recent studies have shown that effective teachers will increase the lifetime earnings of their students. Now, aside from that technical research, however, I think you and I can reside on something that you and I all know and all of us have experienced, and that is each of us knows the impact of a great teacher in our lives. And the most important reason that we take this on is you and I know that to stand by our children, this is the right thing to do. It is the right challenge for us to take on. I salute and I commend our teachers in Oregon. We have great teachers in this state. But more significantly, we need to support them to do their best. We must guarantee that the strongest and the most highly effective teachers need to be in front of our children with the greatest needs. In this state, we have not done a good job, and we need to elevate the same case for our strong principals. You and I need to be an Oregon that learns from the past success of a John O'Neill at Forest Grove, or the current success that's being demonstrated by Charlene Williams at Roosevelt. Or we need to look with hope to the future, led by an inspiring young principal at Alder School in Reynolds by the name of Paz Ramos. Simply stated, this is the urgent challenge of our generation. Our success in reaching every student will be determined by our shared resolve to get the best teachers and the best principals in front of our neediest students. This is an Oregon educational workforce that should be representative of the students that they serve, and one that is best prepared to guarantee success for every child. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Fidanki, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Oregon, and with me is
Henry Levert, the president of the Eugene Springfield chapter of the NAACP.
We have been working together for many years to address inequality and disproportionate discipline against students of color in Oregon schools. And this is an aspect of the achievement gap that parents of students of color are very familiar with. The families have known for generations what happens in Oregon. We've been trying to shine a light on it by sharing the numbers that are reported to the State Department of Education. And the ACLU worked with State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Susan Castillo, to make public these numbers. And in future years, thanks to Superintendent Castillo's leadership, these numbers will be available to everyone on the State Department of Education website, district by district, school by school. So the parents will be able to see if African American children are more likely to be suspended or expelled from their schools than their white colleagues. So they can see if Latino students are treated fairly, if Native American students are treated fairly, because they haven't been treated fairly up until now. And this is a critical piece of education reform that needs to happen in this state. Because here in Oregon and around the country, we have a school to prison pipeline that picks out African American children and Latino children disproportionately and puts them on a path not to success, but to being inmates in close custody in the Oregon Youth Authority and in the State Department of Corrections.
What I want to talk about is the results of the discipline in high school by the school systems using a 19th century solution of suspension. And once you suspend the kid, he's not getting educated. He gets behind. Pretty soon, he drops out. And if you look at the graduation rate of 52% for African Americans and 57% for the Latino students, you can see what happens to the other half. Well, apparently they must be coming to Salem and being housed in one of the state penitentiaries because we have more African Americans in prison than we do in college. Now we're fighting the prison system for the money to educate our kids. Because if we gotta keep them in prison, so they say, then we don't have money to educate them. So since we don't have money to educate them, well, we gotta put them in prison. Does that sound like a catch-22? Yeah. So they don't wanna educate our kids, they wanna incarcerate them. And all you have to do is look what happens to them in the schools, when they get out of school, and where do they go? I'm gonna give you this little anecdote and I'll be through. I got a call yesterday from a parent from Madras. Now, first thing I want to know, how'd you end up in Madras? And she said there's only about 5 African-American families there. It's not that many. But she said it has been a living hell for her children. And her son, who's in the 9th grade, he is constantly, she said, every day he gets to be called the N-word. And for those that don't know what the N-word is, that he gets called nigger every single day he's at school. He's gone to the teachers, no result. He's gone to the principal, no result. And so just not too long ago, kid was calling him faggot, nigger, black. And he kept saying, don't call me that. If you call me that again, I'm gonna hit you. Well, the kid, just before he got off the bus, called him a black nigger fag. So he hit him. He hit him good. Well, parents said, well, we're gonna file assault charges. Now, this kid has been in and out of trouble at the school, suspended over and over again for the same exact reasons. See, that's how it starts. Our kids get the label. They become the one who gets to be called the perpetrator. And pretty soon, they end up losing interest and dropping out. And her daughter in middle school has become so ill that she was hospitalized from the dread of going to school. That was in Madras. Madras is not unique. So let us not think, just because it's over there, that it's not over here. Thank you.
Greetings. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of Native students and our Native educators. Oh, sorry. I'll get to that. Sorry. I want to provide and encourage some policymakers, educators, and other administration some key areas and key organizations to solicit information and consultation for Native students. My name is April Campbell. I'm an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. I also work at my tribe as the education manager. I work with the government to government education cluster, which is one of the key groups that have been working in Indian education for over 30 years. And I just wanted to, we have the little tags, and I just wanted to kind of highlight one of the statistics on there. And we talk about tracking information. Our students in Oregon have a 51% graduation rate per those stickers. But those of us that work for the tribes know that that statistic is actually significantly lower. And so one of the efforts that we're hoping to achieve with working with our state agencies is getting accurate data. Just as with many other students of color, we have the highest poverty rates. Sorry, I'm cold. We have increasing teen pregnancies, transportation issues, and then a lot of our Oregon tribes live in rural areas, so transportation is a huge factor, just getting our students to school, to and from school. In working with our students, they thrive best in environments where they feel most comfortable. So as my colleagues have said, it's important to get not only advocacy in the school districts, but also teachers of color in the school districts. those individuals that understand and work with the communities that we serve, building close relationships with these communities, and gathering and soliciting key ideas in order to make or allow our students to be successful. I want to highlight 3 groups real quickly. For those administrators, policymakers, the government to government cluster, education cluster, has representatives from each of the 9 federally recognized tribes here in Oregon. And so I encourage you to reach out to that group. Another group is the Oregon Indian Education Association, and they also work with Indian education policies, pre-K, what we call cradle to career. Oregon Indian Coalition of Post-Secondary Education is a coalition that has been working since 1989 with community colleges, state agencies, universities to bring awareness of inequity in education retention and degree attainments for Native students. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, encourage you to work with your local tribes, the 9 tribes here in Oregon, and these groups. This is important. The Oregon educational systems need a seamless system, well-trained and committed teachers, clear expectations of all the players, and to provide a safe and supportive environment for our youth. Thank you.
I am cold, but your presence here today really warms my heart. My name is Joseph Santos Lyons. I'm with the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. We're a statewide advocacy group focusing on education, health, and civil rights. The main thing I want to draw attention to today is that there is an academic achievement gap that also impacts the Asian and Pacific Islander communities. There are a large number of newcomers coming to this state, places from Southeast Asia, from Burma, from Bhutan, where no child is making the grade. 0%. We need 100% of our students to be making the grade. We have refugees from Burma, from Bhutan, and school districts where the children's needs are not being met. In the state of Oregon, Asian and Pacific Islanders now number close to 200,000. We also are excited to be here today to join our forces with other communities of color, other immigrants and refugees, other mainstream advocates for education for all students. One of the main principles that we operate by is that policies that address racial inequities, policies that advance racial equity, actually improve the outcomes for all Oregonians. We need to be able to understand the realities that are facing each of our communities. Within the Asian and Pacific American community, that means for us, accurate data is disaggregated data. To be able to see the realities that are facing not only people like me, I'm part Chinese and part white, been here for 4 generations, but who are impacting the newcomers who speak different languages, different cultures, and we are often all lumped together as one. This state is making a priority to look at the academic outcomes of each subgroup. That needs to be able to be disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and language in order for the policies and the funding that we allocate, that our tax dollars go to, are going to be effective. So thank you. The last thing I want to say is that we were a part of a coalition that published the Racial Equity Report Card for the Oregon legislature. And I want to highlight exactly what racial equity is for us. These are proactive racial equity policies that seek to eliminate disparities and advance equitable outcomes for all communities, all Oregonians. Policies that support racial equity targets the institutional and structural barriers that lead to the poor outcomes for communities of color. Race-neutral or colorblind policies, whether intentional or not, can widen existing or cause new disparities. We need to be smart. We are smart. We're going to make this happen. Thank you very much.
¿Se puede? ¡Sí se puede! Mi nombre es Javier Quiroz y soy organizador de padres de la Coalición para la Igualdad de Salem Kaiser.
Mi nombre es María Mendoza y soy organizadora de padres y madres de la Coalición para la Igualdad de Salem Kaiser. Y estamos representando a todos los padres y madres latinos del estado de Oregon.
They are representing all the parents and mothers from around Oregon.
Tenemos en Oregon más de 60,000 niños que necesitan inglés como segunda lengua en programas ELL.
We have in Oregon more than 60,000 English language learners enrolled in ELL programs.
Más del 97% de ellos son oregonianos, nacidos en los Estados Unidos.
More than 97% of them are Oregonians born in the United States.
Más del 97% de ellos son latinos.
More than 97% of them are Latinos.
3% de ellos son de las islas del Pacífico, asiáticos o afroamericanos.
3% of them are Pacific Islanders, Asian, or African.
Por muchos años, nuestro sistema de educación pública en Oregon los viene dejando atrás.
For too many years now, our public education system in Oregon has been failing these students.
Nuestro sistema de educación pública les ha fallado a nuestros niños ELL, aun cuando ellos traen dineros federales y estatales extra para su educación.
Our public education system has been failing our ELL children, even when they bring extra monies from federal and the state to the school districts for the education.
Sabemos claramente que existen líderes de escuelas que dejaron de hacer excusas y tienen escuelas en donde nuestros niños ELL están recibiendo la educación que merecen.
Clearly, we also know that there are school leaders and teachers who have stopped making excuses and have transformed schools to be pockets of success for these English language learners.
¿Cuál es la razón que algunas pocas escuelas tienen a nuestros niños leyendo, escribiendo y haciendo matemática a nivel de grado, mientras que la mayoría de escuelas siguen dejando a nuestros niños atrás?
Why is it that some schools have this population of students reading, writing, and doing math at grade level, and most schools do not?
Todos nosotros juntos necesitamos urgentemente hacer responsables a todos los líderes del sistema de educación pública por continuar haciendo excusas, mientras siguen dejando atrás a nuestros niños ELL y de color en su educación.
We all together, we all have an urgency, and we had to make everyone accountable in the education system and stop making excuses and keep leaving our ELL students and students of color behind.
Si no los hacemos responsables ahora, ¿cuándo?
If we don't hold them accountable now, when?
Ha llegado el momento para sacar a la luz del sol la verdad. Necesitamos transparencia y contabilidad de parte de todos los que están encargados de proveer una buena educación a nuestros hijos.
The time is now for sunshine, transparency, and accountability for everyone involved in the education of our children in Oregon.
Nuestros hijos son oregonianos también. Paremos ya de hacer excusas.
Our children are Oregonians too. Let's stop making excuses now.
Well, hello, I'm Susan Castillo, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction for Oregon. And I have to tell you, listening to these voices here today, do we have fabulous advocates for our children in this state or what? It's fantastic. Absolutely. You know, we hear all the time about the crisis in public education, the achievement gap, the dropout rate, and how the U.S. is falling behind other countries in the world, and that we are not doing a good enough job of preparing each and every student for what's happening in today's global economy. So make no mistake, we do face serious challenges, but I want to tell you today that across Oregon, I do see many schools that are enjoying tremendous success despite the huge challenges. Schools that are showing us day in and day out, as you heard Eduardo and others say, that all children can achieve and that all children can excel. As state superintendent, I established a program to recognize outstanding schools that are showing really strong growth in closing the academic achievement gap. And since 2005, the Celebrating Student Success Awards have highlighted the work of the hardworking educators, parents, and kids at these top-notch schools across our state. Schools like Woodburn High School, which split a large, low-functioning high school into 4 separate academies and has seen their students soar. Weddell Elementary here in Salem, where they understand that you have to connect with students on a deeper level, teaching kids about life skills like integrity and perseverance and courage. And Riverside Elementary in Grants Pass, where the fact that 3 of 4 students are economically disadvantaged doesn't stop the school from posting top reading and math scores in the state. And when you visit these schools, you meet the most remarkable people. The special education teacher in Bend, a remarkable guy who takes his severely disabled students places people never thought they'd go because he has such high expectations for every one of his kids. The principal in Portland who took a fragmented staff and got them working as a team using data about their students and their school to bring them together and turn that school around. The parent from Eagle Point who makes sure that every child who needs a coat or a new pair of shoes or glasses gets them, no questions asked, because they know that basic needs need to be met if our children are going to be successful. But what is lacking in this state and in this country for that matter are the systems and the structures we need to connect the dots and duplicate and replicate what is working in our schools. To take what these award-winning schools have learned and infuse struggling schools with these new energies and new ideas. To empower the amazing educators and parents and kids at these schools to be the very best that they can be. And that's why I am so supportive of the direction that our state is going under the leadership of Governor John Kitzhaber. The work we're doing is already raising awareness and engagement across our state about where we are and where we need to be. So as we work on this legislative session, we do have a unique opportunity to take the initiative and create the kinds of systems we need to ensure that our schools are supported and held accountable to the very highest standard. We've also been working hard on a waiver, I'm sure the governor will talk about that, from what used to be called No Child Left Behind, to free our districts from unfair federal mandates so that they have more flexibility to be innovative and we can create more customized approaches to how we help every child succeed. I have to say something about funding. Funding is important, incredibly important to help our schools move forward. You can't expect schools to gain traction when they're constantly getting undercut. But let's not forget the factors such as leadership, teamwork, high standards, strategies, student-centered action and strategies. The real challenge is making sure that the funding that we have is used on these very best practices and key strategies. If we're going to have high expectations for our kids, we all need to have high expectations for ourselves. And that starts today with all of you in this legislative session working together. It's incredibly important that you're here today. We want to scale up what we know is working in this state, and we can do it if we're all working together. So thank you so much for being here. It is incredibly important that you are. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Tony Hobson. I'm president and CEO of a youth development multi-service organization in Portland, Oregon called Self-Enhancement, Inc., an agency that's been around for 30 years providing services to some of our most underserved kids. And quite frankly, we've been doing it very well and actually graduate 98% of our kids and send 85% of those kids on to college. But today we're here to really talk about urgency, the urgency of now. Most of us realize that every 26 seconds, another kid drops out of school. Tick, tock. Every 26 seconds, an opportunity and options diminish for another kid. Tick, tock. Every 26 seconds, another dream is deferred. Tick, tock. Every 26 seconds, another life has been lost. During our time here today, the 45 minutes, 60 kids' lives will be changed, will be dropped out, and perhaps never moving forward. What we know is that children of color are disproportionately represented in the most critical categories. We heard about it earlier: suspensions, expulsions, test scores, graduation rates, college entrance, unemployment, health care, and as was mentioned earlier, an overrepresentation in the criminal justice system. So we're here today because the urgency really is right now. We're here today because equity is now a new buzzword on everybody's radar screen. We're here today because we have a governor that has made education his top priority.
Yes.
That deserves a clap. We're here today because as a state, we're at risk. As a nation, we're at risk. If we don't better educate children of color, who, by the way, will become the majority kids in this nation by the year 2023, we will fail as a state and we will fail as a nation. So we now have the opportunity for a new educational model, one that creates a public-private partnership between schools and our most successful and impactful community-based programs. This model will provide the complete service delivery system that provides a safety net for all kids and assures that all kids graduate and become positive, contributing citizens.
Yes.
So, Governor, we're here to get behind your efforts. We're here to endorse your education plan. All we ask is that you continue to listen to those on the front lines that are disproportionately impacted by the present educational system. Many of us already are successfully doing what the plan hopes to do in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to say thank you to our governor, the education governor. We thank him for putting children first and for having courage to do what's right. Ladies and gentlemen, our 37th governor, the Honorable John Kitsap.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and I want to ask all of you to give another round of applause for SEI and what Tony's been doing up in Portland for years and years and years. Really, we are here to talk about a profound sense of urgency. These aren't just numbers, these are children with names and faces and hopes and dreams of their own. And really what we're talking about is just taking the things that are already working in places like SEI and taking it to scale throughout the state of Oregon. So I want to thank you for coming here to impress upon the legislature the sense of urgency to improve the academic outcomes of every single child here in the state of Oregon. You know that we've set some very ambitious goals for ourselves. That by 2025, that's the class that the kindergartners next year will graduate in, 2025, that we have 100% high school graduation rates in Oregon, that 40% of those graduates will go on to get at least 2 years of post-secondary education and training, and another 40% will get at least a baccalaureate degree or higher. We've also committed ourselves to raising the per capita income in this state back up above the national average in every corner of Oregon and erasing the disparities in income that have existed for far too long within our communities of color. The fact is that we cannot and will not achieve those goals unless we focus intentionally and specifically on children of color, on English language learners, and on those who live in poverty. We know that 45,000 children are born each year in the state of Oregon, and 40%, over 18,000 of those kids, are on a pathway to school failure because of risk factors that they bring with them. They live in poverty. They haven't had access to the early childhood services that are necessary to make sure that they're ready for school when they get there. We know that 1 out of every 4 children in this state doesn't get enough to eat. We know that over half of African American children in this state live in poverty. We know that we are graduating only 67% of our students, and the graduation rate among communities of color is far lower, and we know that that is no longer acceptable here in the state of Oregon. Again, if we are to erase that future and build an alternative future, we have to focus in our educational efforts specifically and intentionally on children of color, on English language learners, and on those who live in poverty. Because 1 out of every 4 children in our state lives in a household where no English is spoken. We know that over 1/3 of our children are children of color, and that diversity is only going to grow each year on into the future. So now is the time to create a sense of urgency. Now is not the time to falter and step back. As Teddy Roosevelt once said, in any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. So once more, I thank you for being here. We have introduced 2 pieces of legislation, a Senate Bill 1581 and House Bill 5165, that are designed to ensure that we will increase the number of students of color and the number of English language learners who are ready to learn when they get to kindergarten and who will graduate with access to high school and post-secondary training, and that will make the whole state better and lift up our entire society. I'd like to just close here. You're a very brave audience to be out here in this cold weather. I want to just close by reminding you of the words of Robert Kennedy 44 years ago, who was one of my political heroes and one of the reasons I got into politics. He gave a speech in Cleveland to the Cleveland City Club the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And it was a speech about the stain of violence that was spreading through our country, a violence that would claim his own life less than 2 months later. And it started out saying that this is a day of shame and sorrow. But he went on to talk about another kind of violence, and that was the violence of institutions. A violence that was slower but just as deadly destructive as the shot or the bomb in the night. It was the violence of indifference and inaction and slow decay. It's the violence that afflicts the poor. It's the violence that poisons the relationships between people because of their colors or their skin. It's the slow destruction of a child, from hunger, from schools without books, from homes without heat in the winter. We're here today, 44 years later, to make sure that that is not our future in Oregon. Not here, not now, not in the state of Oregon. We are here today to ensure that every single child in our state, regardless of their color, regardless of their home language, regardless of how much money their family makes, has an equal opportunity and, in fact, a certainty of achieving academic excellence and a place in our society in the 21st century. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to working with you over the months and years ahead.
¿Se puede? Can we do it? Remember, we can only do it if we are present. Those ones that are not present don't count. There is a long battle going on in this building, and it's going to move all the way to the legislative session 2013. We all have to remain united, vigilant of what is happening in this building or not. We are going to be talking about forming a statewide coalition of communities of color and English language learners, immigrant communities, because we all gotta stand together. The people that control the public education system are just too strong, too powerful, too organized, too much money. The only thing that we got going for our children is our unity and resolution to stand by them. We gotta be present at all these hearings in the education committees. We gotta be present at all the Oregon Education Investment Board meetings. The neglect can come from us too. Because when we're not present, we're agreeing in a tacit way that the things the way they are okay. And they are not. Can we do it? Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Yes, we can. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. And stay involved, please.